Ranchers rewrite the rules, giving the big packers the boot. They're teaming up with Walmart to create their own plant. And North Platte welcomes sustainable beef with open arms.
Everything we do in agriculture is generationally based. That is, how does this impact my kids?
Straight ahead, we take you to the ribbon cutting and hear why ranchers say it's about leaving a legacy for the next generation. Plus, a world leader in irrigation invests in robotics to produce a precision product for farmers while creating new opportunities for employees. Later, the wildfire threat continues this spring and what you can do on the farm and ranch to be ready. And soybean acres trending down over profitability concerns. We'll hear what market watchers think of planting intentions. It's time to grow.
And tough times create tough men, and then tough men innovate. And we innovated, and it changed our community.
Tired of a monopoly in the meatpacking industry, cattlemen take the bull by the horns and build their own plant. I'm Steve White in North Platte, where sustainable beef cuts the ribbon in anticipation of its grand opening. Little boots, big legacy. The Wasserberger kids are sixth-generation ranchers, but their dad grew tired of big packers profiting off his hard work.
COVID pandemic did a lot to supply chains. Timing was huge. It was very, very important for us to establish and make a sustainable supply chain, and so that's what we all did.
Set to process 1,500 head of cattle daily, sustainable beef's a game changer, rivaling the railroad's arrival in North Platte, ensuring the ranching legacy continues.
It will have an enormous effect for many, many years to come. North Platte is very excited to have this plant here. It's the largest thing to happen in a real long time.
It's a long time coming.
1,687 days ago, we sat down with the Sustainable Beef founders.
Forgive the economic development director if he's been keeping track. Projects like this are as rare as a perfectly cooked steak.
These guys that took their own destiny into their hands and knew that they had to have it for future generations, or if we were going to sustain the agriculture base that North Platte is famous for. I mean, this is cattle country. This is the heart of the Sandhills, and if you can't do cattle processing here, then where in the world does it make sense to do it?
The idea sparked when rancher Rusty Kemp vented about packers on an overseas trade mission.
And so I encouraged him to start his own. And that's what he and his partners did. They went out and started this facility. And so this is one that's owned by Nebraska ranchers, and that's why I'm so confident it's going to be tremendously successful.
Walmart stepped in to provide not only distribution, but funding that ranchers say got the project on track.
Obviously, the Walmart partnership was huge. City partnership was huge.
And a reversal of the narrative about rural decline.
Instead of raising talent and losing it, not only are we retain it in this model, but we're also recruiting it.
2, 1. As the ribbon falls, it's more than a milestone. Trey Wasserberger says it's a promise for the future of rural America.
Everything we do in agriculture is generationally based. That is, how does this impact my kids and 7 generations? And this is no different.
Now let's take a look at sustainable beef behind the numbers. It is a 556,000 square foot facility, processing 1,500 head a day at max capacity with 850 employees. Economic impact analysis shows a $1 billion impact on the region. The plant will operate a single shift, and it has been 1,687 days since the project first got started. A robot revolution drives innovation on the farm. I'm Steve White in Deschler, where Reinke Manufacturing invests $12 million in robotics, but also invests in its workforce.
Reinke, make it rain!
Their equipment makes the water flow even when the sky is dry.
Legacy of providing the world's finest irrigation system.
Reinke Manufacturing makes waves with a $12 million investment in robotic welding.
It puts everything exactly where it's supposed to be because it's robotically welded and it's robotically placed, so everything's robotically placed. So it makes the highest quality product, and the other thing that it does is it does it very quickly.
With unemployment at rock bottom lows, technology helps Reinke stay rooted in rural Nebraska.
Yeah, we don't take anybody's jobs away when we do this. All we're doing is actually we're providing better jobs.
Reinke sends staff to 4 high schools, turning employees into welding teachers.
Actually, a really, really great teacher. He's taught me a lot.
How to use a CNC mill, and he also has taught us how to use Bobcat.
With pinpoint accuracy and higher output, systems like this help Reinke meet global irrigation demands.
People in rural communities especially, they think robotics and AI, they think that it's job replacement, but it's actually job retention, allowing these companies to diversify and do faster, more precise work, so it actually is job creation.
Governor Jim Pillen sees a bigger picture. Irrigation driving Nebraska's economy, from higher corn yields to biofuels.
There's so many extraordinary things, and I just want you to know it couldn't happen. Couldn't happen without Reinke.
Making it rain for farmers, workers, and Nebraska's future. The company also unveiling new products for farmers, staying at the cutting edge. Reinke announced the general availability of RainCloud 3 remote irrigation management. Fully integrated with Reinke's latest monitoring hardware, RC3, RainCloud gives growers an easy way to remote access, monitor, and control their in-field equipment across multiple fields and locations, and quickly take action based on centralized farm data insights, all from your mobile device. Growers will be equipped with a number of tools to easily improve water efficiency, including advanced telemetry that automates the collection of real-time field conditions, an interface that prioritizes actions that require immediate attention, advanced view layers including weather, soil, yield, chemigation, fertigation, and seeding maps, customization and advanced programming capabilities including forward and reverse field sector programming, end-to-gun and auxiliary programming, and customizable machine groupings. The proposal to exempt Nebraska feedlots from the Brand Act continues to generate heated debate. The proposal from Senator Teresa Ibaugh, as originally written and through an amendment, would create a new classification of exempt feedlots. It has drawn the ire of the Brand Committee. The Nebraska Cattleman has raised some concerns but has not taken a position yet. Now, Nebraska Farm Bureau says it is opposed. The group says it supports efforts to modernize the fee structure but cannot support exempting feedlots. In a statement, Farm Bureau President Mark McHarg said, quote, "For over 80 years, the Nebraska Brand Committee has played a vital role in overseeing livestock brand registration, enforcement, and proof of ownership. Creating an exemption for feedlots would disrupt the balance of participation in the brand inspection program and potentially undermine the purpose of the brand inspection laws to ensure satisfactory evidence of ownership of livestock when sold. This directly contradicts our members' policy position and threatens the integrity of the system. However, we continue to remain hopeful that a solution can be achieved that is satisfactory to all parties, that keeps Nebraska's beef industry in a strong competitive position." End quote. Meanwhile, there's a counter-proposal in the legislature that would direct the Brand Committee to develop recommendations and draft reports by the end of the year. We will continue to track it. The Nebraska Soybean Board works with teachers to develop cross-curricular lessons that incorporate soybean farming in the classroom. The Nebraska Soybean Board is excited to announce the 2025 Summer Soybean Institute, a hands-on multi-day program designed to equip middle and high school educators with the resources to integrate soybeans into lessons on science, math, economics, and agriculture. That will be hosted by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln this July. Educators who take part will receive a stipend plus money for classroom supplies. The Water for Food Global Conference is coming soon and includes a panel discussion on the role of irrigation. Corn Board Chairman Brandon Honeycutt of Giltner will join the panel along with experts on health and climate. They'll look at the role irrigation plays in supporting greater access to a varied and nutritious diet and challenges with growing competition over water resources. That's all part of the Hewerman Lecture Series. One of those on the panel is Dr. Jesse Bell from the University of Nebraska Med Center. His research focusing on nitrates.
associated with adverse human health outcomes.
Still to come as we await USDA's planting intentions report, we talk to market analysts about what that report could mean. Up next, repeated red flag warnings and lingering drought. We talk about preparing the farm and ranch for wildfires. Lingering drought brings fire concerns. We spoke with Nebraska Extension about preparing the ranch and farm. Farms and ranches often have multiple buildings, haystacks, fuel storage tanks, livestock, limited water access, distant fire departments, and they're in close proximity to significant fuel loads. Sooner or later, most ranches and farms will be faced with an approaching wildfire.
One thing is where's your fuel tanks at? Make sure that they're away from any building. And then also the other thing I would say is keep your weeds cut down. I mean, we always like a nice looking place, but boy, in the case of a fire, it's really important because those weeds will just take that fire right to the building.
It's something you want to think about long before fire is headed toward your property, as we visited with Randy Sainer of Nebraska Extension.
Make sure that you have an extinguisher. I like to have an extinguisher in the house and in the barn, because you might get caught in the barn and you might be able to put it out, and then I would also say, carry a fire extinguisher in your UTVs, your tractors. And so that's just going to help you if you can put it out. Because I've known, for instance, my brother was out feeding cows one time with his UTV, and he caught it on fire, and he tried to get it out, and he had to call the fire department to get it out because it was so dry. That was the year it was so dry. It just spread way too fast for him. And so the other thing I guess I would be careful of is when you're driving your UTV or your pickup out in the pasture and there's a lot of tall, old grass, it's really easy to catch it on fire. And we see a lot of fires start that way too. So try to avoid that as much as you can. Sometimes we have to go out there, but especially on windy days, if it's a still day, a lot of times we could get a fire out if it started. But on a windy day, like we have right now, the red flag days, it'll just carry that fire so fast you can't get it put out. And those are some things that I think. The other thing is, if it's coming to your barn or your house, you might shut off your electricity. And why I say that is it might help it not spread. The other thing is, do you have a water source? Do you have all your tanks full of water? Because the fire department's going to want to be able to use that water. And so if it's dry, I would get my tanks filled up with water so you have available water. And speaking of that, I know somebody that doesn't have that done. So I need to talk to somebody on that. But yeah, have them available so that they can suck that water out of those tanks and use them. And hopefully you have like a cistern or something at home or a big tank that you can fill up. So, first of all, we're going to protect the house and the barn, the buildings first. But the other thing is, if you're stuck in there, be really careful if you can feel heat about opening that door, because when you let oxygen in, it can explode things. So you just got to be really careful about getting out of that place if there's a fire around you.
Are we seeing any improvement in drought? Kyle Kleckner joins us next with our Grow Weather Outlook.
This week's drought monitor was released, and of course kind of a mixed bag here across the Central Plains. Take a closer look now at the state of Kansas, where conditions did worsen slightly over the past week or so in most categories. No drought now stands about 9 3/4%, abnormally dry 90 1/4% there. Both of those about a 1/4% reduction compared to last week's report. Moderate drought now stands at about 56 3/4%. An 8 1/4% reduction compared to last week's report. Still a little bit of severe drought there across the southernmost part of Kansas. Represents about 2.38%, precisely the same as last week. Moving up north to Nebraska now, where no drought remains the same as last week. 1.83% there, maybe some southwesternmost areas. Meanwhile, abnormally dry conditions account for 98.2%, just about. Moderate drought now stands roughly 75 2/3%. Actually, a 16% improvement compared to last week's report. Good to see that. Severe drought now stands about 42 1/3%, about the same as last week. And the extreme drought there in northern and western parts of the Panhandle, about 8.2%. That represents also the same as last week. As far as temperatures go for April, Nebraska looking to be pretty average, and most of Kansas as well. Maybe some above average temperatures for some southwestern areas. Meanwhile, precipitation pretty average for most of Nebraska and Kansas. However, southwestern parts of Nebraska, western Kansas, slightly below normal totals expected. As far as next 3 months go, temperature-wise, really almost all of Nebraska pretty close to average. Meanwhile, almost all of Kansas looking slightly above normal. And as far as precipitation goes, next 3 months, probably not what you want to see is the drought maybe continuing here. Some dry conditions expected for a good chunk of Nebraska and Kansas, although closer to average totals expected for eastern parts of both states. Your Grow Almanac here for the week ahead. Normally see a high right around 60, a normal low right around 34. Running a little warmer this next week. Average high about 66. The average low about 40. So not too much to complain about. Of course, we had some colder weather here this past weekend. And again, we got some warmer weather in store for the next week. Again, pretty close to normal for our Monday. Temperatures getting back in the 60s and 70s really the rest of the week. Maybe a little bit warmer towards the end of the week. Got a couple of rain chances again Tuesday. Time for him to watch there. Maybe Monday night as well. Also maybe tracking a system towards the tail end of the week. So something to keep an eye on. Stay tuned to up throughout the week. Your Grow proverb for the week ahead kind of pertains to rain. A dry April, not the farmer's will. Rain in April is what he wills, and boy, do we need the rain. Good news is we got a couple of chances, hopefully, in this next week to maybe make that proverb come true. Otherwise, that is a look at your Grow Weather Report for this week. Stay tuned next week when once again it'll be time to grow.
Driven by a trade war and uncertainty, more corn acres, fewer soybeans planted.
And it's just really hard to come up with a lot of soybean acres anywhere in the country. A lot of producers wanting to go to lower soybeans.
We'll hear from market analysts about what farmers will be planting in 2025. The on-again, off-again trade war drives uncertainty in farm markets. I'm Steve White. As growers get ready to put seed in the ground, we expect more corn acres and certainly a decline in the amount of soybeans being planted.
And it's just really hard to come up with a lot of soybean acres anywhere in the country. A lot of producers wanting to go to lower soybeans.
Certainly these decisions being driven by profitability concerns.
Any break-even projection we do, we're well below break-evens in some cases, 75 cents to $1 under cost of production right now. So that's really hard to get a producer invested into the idea of adding more beans. One of the things we talk a lot about too is being able to bushel your way out of a loss situation. Kind of do that, with corn and wheat. Catch just enough rain at the right time, you can tack on 20-30% above APH relatively easily on yield and kind of get yourself to a spot where you can make a little money doing it. It's really hard to do that on soybeans.
Yeah. So what kind of number are you putting in there for Zag Market putting in there on the corn side of things then?
We're at 95.4 million acres. So on the high side, I think the average was 94.4. We think we'll see about 1 million additional acres over what the rest of the trade, and about 1.5 million acres over the outlook forum that USDA came out with in February. Our opinion is couple things. Our network is pretty wide, and we're partnered with John Stewart and Associates, which is a commercial brokerage firm. And so we didn't necessarily survey farmers. We surveyed brokers for both JSA, Ag Market. We all deal with a lot of farmers. We deal with a lot of seed corn, seed salespeople. We deal with a lot of elevators and ethanol plants. And so reached out within our network and kind of asked them what they feel we were going to see. And the overwhelming majority said more corn acres. Matt Bennett, one of our founders, speaks all over the country and he pretty well speaks 3 to 4 times a week during the wintertime. And said everywhere he went, he would ask the question, how many are you going to plant more acres of corn? And he said the overwhelming majority of every meeting I went to pretty much every farmer in there raised their hand to that question. So,
And it also has an impact on the cattle sector.
I'll be excited to see it. You hear a lot of people talking about fewer cattle on feed, fewer poultry on feed. I get all that. The other thing, I don't know what the economics or the numbers on this would look like, but when you start feeding animals to, over 1,700 pounds and 870 pound carcass weights, that last few hundred pounds you put on them is nowhere near as efficient as the first 500. So we might have fewer head on feed, but I still think we're using more feed than maybe we normally would. And I don't know how they adjust those numbers.
And a note as we close, next week we will of course be with thousands of our friends. About 7,000 FFA members joining us at the 97th annual Nebraska FFA Convention. And many more visitors and guests who will be there as well. We plan to be there and hope to visit with a lot of those kids and then talk about it next Sunday night right here. And we'll see you back here again next time as we see how agriculture makes Nebraska grow.